You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another emotionally spent episode of the Assembly Call. As today, your Indiana Hoosiers snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, losing to the Maryland Terrapins 79-78 in a game where, Maryland really controlled a lot of the second half. And then Indiana made some plays late and got themselves the lead. And it really felt like they were going to be able to pull this one out. Someone texted me with Indiana up 3, win or lose. And I said, win. Very confidently. Like it just, Leal makes that play. You feel good. And then, my goodness, just really, really poor basketball choices and execution on the final defensive play and on the final offensive play. And Maryland, once again, comes into Assembly Hall and steals one late. The loss drops Indiana to 15-6 overall. No, I'm sorry, 14-7 overall, 5-5 in Big Ten play. Just so much to talk about in this one. Some good, some bad. But, man, like, honestly, it's just so disappointing to have a game like that that's so important. You win this game, you get to 6-4 in conference play. You can feel good about notching another win against a team that's in the top 20 of the net. And Indiana just unable to close it out there late. Just a really disappointing ending. I'm Jared Morris. Happy to be back here on the Assembly Call, joined by the coach, Bob Moats, today. And we're going to break it all down for you in this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And let's start this show the way that we start every show. That is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And today's banner moment is a celebration of Anthony Leal. And I was very proud of myself because after Malik Renew got stripped and Anthony Leal was there to corral the loose ball, get fouled, put Indiana up 4, I wrote down on my notes the Leal seal. We know about the Leal deal. I thought that was going to be the Leal seal, the play to seal the victory for Indiana. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. But I think what we saw down the stretch were, and the announcers called it out, the reasons why Anthony Leal is such an important piece for this team. And the biggest play for me is I want to go back to when it was 70-67. Indiana's down by 3. They had some opportunities to take the lead, to tie it. And there was one play, and I know every Indiana fan caught this, but Indiana, they were down 1. They had a chance. They couldn't score. And as Maryland's dribbling the ball up, the announcer says, Indiana just can't get over the hump. And I think all Indiana fans are like, yes, we're well aware of this. We've known this for a long time. We're trying to get over this hump. And of course, Maryland promptly drains 2 3-pointers as if to just say, and you're not getting over the hump either. But a few minutes later, it's 70-67. Maryland's wing guy, Miguel, who had a terrific second half, called for an ISO on Anthony Leal, drives him into the lane. Leal plays terrific defense, doesn't foul him, doesn't overplay him, basically just lets Miguel kind of turn the ball over on his own. He kind of stumbles over. Then after that terrific defense, Leal runs in transition, gets the and one. That tied it 70-70. Myles Rice would then hit a 3 to put Indiana up 73-70. And then on the next play, Maryland missed. Leal fought Julian Reese for the rebound, got it, got fouled. Indiana up 3. And it was that play, and it was the play that put Indiana up 4. Anthony Leal can go the whole game without making a lot of shots and, without doing a whole lot. But I tell you, in some of these games, you think back to the Iowa game last year, you think back to the Ohio State game last year, so many games where Indiana has won where Anthony Leal has made big plays late. He did it again. And unfortunately, he got taken out on the very final play of the game, which we will discuss. But I credit Anthony Leal for just always being ready to make the big play when it was there to be made. He made a couple of them. Felt like in the moment they were going to result in a victory, but unfortunately Indiana was 1 point short today, and they lose. But Anthony Leal continues to show why he is a valuable part of this team. He got the start, and he needs to continue to play as many minutes as possible, because does Anthony Leal raise your ceiling as a program? Probably not. But this team needs him. They need the stuff that he does, and he showed that again today. All right, our banner moment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, now in their 8th season, sponsoring the Assembly Call, and their 4th as the presenting sponsor for the Back Home Network. As you know, Home Field has the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find anywhere, And since IU is their flagship school, more high-quality gear with unique IU logos from the past is always right around the corner. They've got the knit sweaters that came out. They're always trying out new stuff. Like whenever there's something new, Indiana's going to be first. I am actually getting ready to order another snapback hat with the Bison logo because I was taking a look at mine yesterday and it's got sweat stains and it's just disgusting because I wear it all the time. And so now I need another one so that I have the hat for good stuff, like when I'm dropping my son off at school, or like I had to run out to meet my wife at a restaurant and I needed a hat and I felt kind of embarrassed because it was gross. And so now I need that one that can be the one when I'm outside working out in the yard and doing stuff, and then another nice one that I can wear. But that's the thing with Home Field Apparel. Dress it up, dress it down. It's all good. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Make sure you check out their socials, get their text alerts, their emails, find out what their latest promos are. You can always use our promo code HOME23. That'll get you 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME23 for 15% off. Once again, the website, homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. Okay, it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. We will start with Coach Bob Moats. Coach, just full disclosure, we spent about 45 seconds just screaming at the top of our lungs before we hit live just to get some frustration out. But I'm going to go over to you. Your opening thoughts on this disappointing Indiana loss.
God is my witness. I thought this game was over at 38 seconds to go. God is my witness. I thought this game was over at 38 seconds to go. It's one of those things where for everything we've talked about in the last, just everything we talked about on these shows, and happy Sunday, everybody. I know the frustrating thing is you saw how IU could be a top 4 seed today, and you saw how IU could also miss the tournament today in the way they played, and how they were deployed, and what they did across the board. Everything. It was kind of like one of those things where it's like if you want to watch a game that's kind of the microcosm of this season in a single game, I think we see it today. And I really think the biggest, if there is any hope in the situation, I mean, if you're looking for hope, I'll get to that in a minute. If you're looking for something not to be hopeful about, you can kind of look at just how everything kind of just went in that last minute. And just know that at this point, they're still, they're trying to figure out stuff that other teams have already kind of figured through. How you give up the open 3-pointers, or those 3-pointers at the end. How teams like Maryland are coming in and they're using all 5 options on the floor. And yet IU, when they don't use their 5 options, they force the ball into certain areas offensively, defensively, when they try to overplay the basketball and not pressure passing lanes, and really just get out of position to the point where the other team's able to just run what they want to run whenever they want to run it and get the shot they want whenever they want it. That, I can see that. If you're looking hopefully, just look at the fact that these guys are still competing. I mean, they at least for portions of the game. I'm still killing to see that 40-minute competition. Again, we didn't see it again today. And the frustrating part, I think, for us as fans, we see it, it's almost like, it's a helter-skelter at Assembly Hall. I mean, you heard Assembly Hall the way it's supposed to be for a home game, and then you've heard how it's been the last couple of games, all in a matter of, 5 minutes. And I mean, I could tell, the national guys' heads are spinning on swivels trying to figure out what's going on here. There's a lot of frustration, a lot of pent-up energy, and I think that this is a fan base that's dying to turn it positive. They're dying to have a chance to say, we want to see the type of basketball we saw, as Jared, you mentioned in the banner moment. They want to see that for 40 minutes, and they're going to reward that, but they're frustrated on the fact that there's just too many times where it just drops, and it's not even, call it focus, call it execution, call it whatever words you wanted to describe it. It's just not all there where it needs to be all there.
Yep. Well, look at this. I wasn't sure if we were going to see Ryan Phillips today, but those last 15 seconds were like a bat signal, just needing a rant. And here he is on Championship Sunday, ready to do it. Ryan, your thoughts on the final few seconds there for Indiana?
I'm going to sound terrible. I think my audio is not going to be great because I don't have my setup. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm covering the NFL for Sports Illustrated today, so I wasn't going to be on the show. But what I just saw is it's not even like I'm so disappointed. Upset. This is what Indiana is now. This is it. I mean, I like Bob, I thought the game was over, but then there's this creeping feeling that, oh no, the worst is going to happen, because that's what we've watched for the last few years. And that sequence, more upsetting than anything, was the defensive sequence where they had a foul to give at the end and didn't do it. And you could say that, well, they tried. They didn't do it. It doesn't matter if they tried to. It doesn't matter if they were instructed to. That didn't translate to the court. And Maryland hits a 3 to take the lead. They don't even get it like a 2 to tie the game. They hit an open 3 because you didn't execute what you were supposed to execute. And that is Indiana. That is Indiana in a nutshell right now. Have a chance to do something and fail to do it. And then on the other end, they had no idea what they were doing in that last sequence. They pulled guys in and out. Nobody knew who was supposed to be in the game or out of the game. It was this confusing shuffle. They didn't have a play ready to go for that out of bounds sequence at that time with that score. And they lost. And it was a game they should have won. And I went on Twitter immediately afterwards, which is dangerous at all times. I don't recommend it to anybody.
Why do you do that?
I don't know.
It's not good.
Don't do that.
No bueno. No bueno.
But I just said, your program is what you do, not what your potential is. You are what you do. Duke consistently is a top 10 team. Arizona is consistently a top 10 team. North Carolina, whatever, Kansas is always in contention for a national title. That's what those programs are. What Indiana is now is a team that cannot execute in the clutch, loses games at home, and gets blown out regularly. That's what Indiana as a program is. It's not, well, we got all these good players. We could team. It's not a healthy program and not a good program. And that's what we have to look at when we look at all of this stuff, because this stuff consistently happens. We know where we are. We know what this is. There's no more excuses.
I think your audio may have been cutting it a little in and out there, Ryan, but I think we got the gist.
Breaking up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, the slow motion facial expressions, I think, really communicated the feeling. Yes. By the way,
apologies. Really not set up for this.
I did go on Twitter just to retweet the link, and over on the right hand side under Explore, where Twitter has their AI that has trending topics. One of them says Anthony Leal's heroics propel Indiana to victory. Oops. They want to fix your AI, Elon. There's a lot of different places to go here, Coach. And again, I do think there were some positives that we're going to get to. I mean, Myles Rice's shot making in the second half was absolutely huge for Indiana. Sometimes you just need a guy who can step up and make some shots. But I think the biggest storyline coming out of this game is Indiana's defense. Having poor defensive execution on the last play for Maryland. And by the way, hat tip to Rodney Rice. That was a phenomenal shot. Indiana played poor defense, but that guy still had to make a terrific shot, and he did. And Maryland goes 12 of 24 from 3 for the game. I mean, and they missed some open ones in the second half, or that could have been worse. But Indiana coach gives up 1.234 points per possession for the game to Maryland. And this is just a continuation of what we've seen for this program, which really feels kind of rudderless defensively. And you look at, take a guy like Mackenzie Mbako, who scored 16 points. I thought really had some nice moments. Honestly, I thought this was as hard as I've seen Mackenzie Mbako play in a long time. He, flew in for an offensive rebound putback. I thought he was out there trying, and yet his man Miguel scored 8 to 10 straight points in the second half. And when they took Mbako out, the defense at least played a little bit better there down the stretch. I don't mean that to just pick on him as a criticism, but it's just some of the lineup combinations that Indiana has out there just really can't function defensively. And so we can nitpick that final possession, and I think we should, because, hey, that's winning time. You got to be, at a minimum, you got to be good situationally, and you have to execute basic stuff in that moment. But on the whole, defensively, this was, I thought, overall just a really poor defensive effort. I think a lot of the positives come on offense and with rebounding and with some other things. But I thought defensively, Maryland pretty much got whatever shot they wanted all game long. And I honestly thought they probably could have put up some more points if it weren't for missing some open threes.
I'd agree with that. And I think, one thing I'm noticing when I watch IU, and this is, all season long, we still see players getting into each other on the court, retroactively communicating versus proactively communicating. And the retroactive communication is yelling. Basically, they're yelling at each other because they're not sure what coverage they're in, or you're also playing lineups because of your size where you're not leveraging your size by closing out as effectively as other programs that would have 3 guys at that 6'8 plus, or 4 guys potentially with that 6'8 plus playing together on the floor at the same time. And you need to have proactive communication to be able to say, okay, what are we doing in this ball screen? What are we doing? Where's the help coming from to tag the guy on the empty side? Who are we coming off of? Who are we staying on? Versus what we saw. I mean, we saw in the second half. I mean, we talk about the threes, but I mean, there was the one where after Reese scores on an empty side ball screen, basically empty side action. There's one where he gets the same empty side, they get the tag, and then their queen is standing wide open inside the block for an easy layup. And these are the types of things that IU gets picked apart on night in, out, day in, day out. It negates those big plays like you saw with Anthony Leal in that under 5 where they got the 3-on-1 to the end one. Those types of errors negate those really gutsy plays that you can see this team capable of making. And at some point, again, you're going to, we're now next game's going to be Purdue on the last day of January. These are questions you should have. We feel like they should have been done basically in November and December. So yeah, defensively, you had this. You said the breakdowns aren't nearly as catastrophic as they were in Atlantis, but they're still pretty bad.
Ryan, thoughts on the defense, and then I know you have something else you want to discuss before you got to bounce.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's the same problems all the time, and it's guys just not communicating, not doing what they're supposed to, and not being in the right place. And when they are in the right place, maybe not closing out the inch they need to, maybe not being positioned correctly. I mean, it's as Bob said, these are problems that should have been sorted out in October. Not the middle of the Big Ten season. We're almost in February. We're in the middle of the season. And these things are still an issue, and it's still trying to get guys to do the right thing. Like, that should be second nature at this point. And I want to go to, a quote from about the final possession. Mike Woodson said that Maryland, he said, they went to zone and we had to play for Myles and we thought the big would switch off and they didn't. Okay. Your play should not be one option in that time. If the big doesn't switch, where do you go? And what's the second option? What's the next thing? You should have multiple options on every play. And it feels like he just thinks he was going to outsmart the opposing coach into falling into his trap. It's like, well, you got to have a backup plan for everything. And just like with your program, you have to have a backup plan for everything. If the nail slot rim is not working, you got to have a backup plan for something to change to maybe lessen the amount of time you're spending off of guys, or the way you're positioning, or the over helping on offense. If feeding the post or running through the post isn't working in a game, you got to have a backup plan. You can't just keep doing the same things with no second option and expect it to work because you think you have a better game plan than the other guy. That's not how college basketball works. And quite frankly, I never thought I'd say this, but Kevin Willard outcoached Indiana's coach today. And Kevin Willard, a lot of people don't think he's the greatest coach on the planet. And I just think that Indiana deserves better. I mean, last year people thought Kevin Willard was going to get fired in his first year in Maryland. So I think it's just a microcosm of the whole thing. It's just not being prepared and not executing are the two things, and the two of the most important things in basketball. And it's not happening in Indiana right now. And that's all you need to say. You don't need to say anything deeper than that. It's just not happening.
Before you jump off, Ryan, just because I was watching this and I was writing it down frequently throughout the game. When Indiana plays the full court offensively, like when they play sideline to sideline, when they're seeing the whole floor, they're a pretty good basketball team. When they're engaged, they can be. When you're seeing them try to basically limit their offense to a segment of the court, we see what we've seen.
Well, you hamstring yourself.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of where I'm getting at with all this. And I just wanted to kind of bounce that off you before you jumped out of here.
All right. So hold on.
I need to clear my throat quick.
Now, I want to make sure that I got your statement right. Kevin Willard, a lot of people don't think he's the greatest basketball coach in the world. I just want to make sure that you stand by that. Okay. Because we can edit it out. That's a bold claim.
No, I do think that a lot of people think that he may not be a Hall of Famer. It's just, look, also, it's a fringe group. I will say it's more of a fringe group, but I believe in that.
Also, a coach who has notoriously struggled on the road, especially in Big Ten play, just came in and got a win at a
yeah, exactly. That guy. Not necessarily the top of the heap. But no, I just think that, it's not even worth we know what this is. We don't have to examine it. It's just, this is the kind of stuff that constantly happens. And at some point you have to say enough is enough. And you do. And we all know that. And it's not worth going down the whole road, but it's just another brick in the wall of what we've seen the whole time. We know what the building looks like. It's time to knock it down.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan,
and on that,
you got to bounce. Any final thoughts?
I was going to say on that, I leave you guys with the rest of the show, the difficult part. I just came in for the easy part. But
give us, what are your predictions for today?
I think it's going to be, I think we'll wind up with an Eagles-Chiefs rematch in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. I have a good friend who's going to be really happy to hear that. I have a good friend of mine who's going to be really happy to hear that. You're going to make his next 2 weeks really happy. And two good friends of ours. They're going to be really happy.
Andy Bobs would be thrilled with that. But I will say this.
Too.
I will say this. The Chiefs, I don't think, are necessarily better than the Bills, but they know how to win, and they have known how to win all year, and they always figure it out. So I'm going to say I think the Chiefs take it, although I think Buffalo's the better team. And the Eagles, I think, are just better than the Commanders. So, although they're missing key players, so don't bet based on this prediction.
I am going to bet on the Bills and Redskins now. Thank you very much for that.
Enjoy it.
See, man, read his work on si.com. And occasionally when he makes the mistake of going to Twitter. Thank you, Ryan.
Possibly.
Later, guys. Have you here. Okay, Coach Moats, we're going to talk about offense, but we're going to hold it for the next segment. So real quick here, before we get out of here, first segment, I do want to remind everybody that our annual Back Home Network meetup is occurring on February 8th. That is the weekend of Indiana's home game against Michigan. And it's going to be a fun day. On the 8th, we're going to be doing it with our friends over at Upstairs. Galen and friends will be there. So Upstairs has their breakfast club that morning. Doors open at 7. There's no cover. So if you aren't going to the game, or if you want a place to, kind of party before the game, go to Upstairs, hang out. The first 200 people in the door get a free shirt and breakfast, courtesy of Jack Fire, which is the Jack Daniels answer to Fireball. And then during the game, Galen's probably going to be doing some stuff like at halftime. He'll do a little halftime report, and he'll just be holding court like Galen does. Like sometimes it's just nice to be there, take in the aura, admire the hair, and just, be there for any nuggets of wisdom that get dropped. And so you can be there for that. And then there will be a post-game gathering with the assembly call team, whichever ones of us are able to actually make it. I know Andy can't be there. I'm still working on it, but Ryan will be there for sure. Coach will be there. I know Coach Moats, Mike Weemuth will be there. So there's going to be a lot of people there. And obviously we want to see as many of you as possible. But that is the 8th. And hopefully Indiana has some victories between now and then. But February 8th is the date for that. And so we hope to see as many of you there as possible. Okay, Bob, let's hold our discussion of the offense off until the second segment, because I think there's some good, but there's also some situational bad that I want to talk about. So coming up as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's 1-point loss to Maryland, these meaningful moments you might have missed, and then we will go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hey, this is Max Bielfeldt, Big Ten champ and better than advertised Sixth Man of the Year in 2016. And speaking of better than advertised, join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
All right. Thank you, Max. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris here with the coach, Bob Moats. And we are breaking down Indiana's heartbreaking, disappointing 79-78 loss to the Maryland Terrapins. And it is time now for today's meaningful moment that you might have missed.
Meaningful moments that you might have missed.
This segment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Hoosier Ticket Project, where they help individuals and families experience IU athletic events in person for the first time through the generosity of alumni and fans. To learn more about how you can donate money or extra tickets to help create meaningful moments for other IU fans, visit HoosierTicketProject.org. That's HoosierTicketProject.org. And honestly, if you can't go to the game, if you don't want to go to a game, there's nothing better that you can do with your tickets than donate it to our friends at Hoosier Ticket Project. You know someone's going to get it that it'll be really meaningful for. So make sure that you check them out. Okay, Bob, let's talk about the offense. Because, again, there was a lot to like. I think Mackenzie Mbako had a really nice, versatile offensive game. He made some threes, had some drives, had some putbacks. Myles Rice shot making, the 3 threes that he made in the second half were absolutely huge. I mean, when Maryland had Indiana on the brink, up 8, up 9, up 10, it always felt like Myles Rice was there to hit a 3 that, kind of kept us within arm's reach, and then another play would happen and we'd be okay. Umar Ballo, 14 points, 6 of 12 from the field. That's maybe the one nitpick, is that your 2 big guys go 11 of 26, which isn't very efficient, and Malik clearly kind of trying to get himself back into it. But Indiana, 7 of 17 from 3. You'd like to see a few more attempts, but the efficiency certainly is good. And yet, when I think back to the game, the moments that stand out to me are the moments where it really felt like Indiana needed a bucket in the half court and they couldn't get it. Now, again, we mentioned in the banner moment, when they needed a big play, Anthony Leal helped create a transition bucket, right? Or, Myles Rice off the dribble would get a 3. But when things really got bogged down and you had to run half court offense, I think back to the end of the first half when it was 38-37, I think, 39-38, whatever. Maryland was up 1, and we had 2 chances to take the lead going into halftime. And it's one of those seesaw back and forth things that it kind of felt like you get a bucket, you go running off at halftime, nice little piece of momentum. And I think we turned it over on one possession, or Luke Goody shot like this wild kind of fading shot because we couldn't get anything better. Then we turned it over, and so you get nothing. And then Maryland immediately comes out, goes on a 5-point run, and asserts control in the second half. You think about late, obviously, in the game, when it was 75-72, it's Indiana ball. We've got a chance there to put some distance between us and Maryland, and we can't get a good shot. Myles Rice ends up just shooting a fadeaway on the baseline. Leal gets the offensive rebound, then Galloway turns it over trying to hit Ballo. And obviously we know what happened on that final possession. So I think there were moments of good offense, Bob, where you saw some of the individual talents come through, Indiana's ability in transition, Myles Rice's shot making, and some moments for Ballo and Renew where, you were able to get some good offense. But in moments when execution was at a premium and Maryland really locked in defensively, it felt like we didn't have answers. And so I don't want to bury the offense or under an avalanche of negativity, because I think there were things to like. But I can't help but look at the moments where it really mattered at the end of the game and winning time and think, man, we left some important possessions out there on the court where if just one of those goes differently, this game might finish differently. And that's easy to say in a 1-point game, but it's also because in the moments when those possessions happened, they felt monumental. And it's almost like the weight of the possession kind of, I don't know, just affected our execution a little bit. And we didn't know exactly what we wanted to do with the ball. We ended up not doing anything productive with it. So I don't know what your thoughts are, but that's kind of my overall take on the offense.
Offensively, it's kind of like this weird tug of war. And someone actually mentioned in the chat, how can you say they were good? And I think a lot of it's just I think Ryan hit the nail on the head of you are what you do, not what you can be. And that's a good way of looking at this. There are times where there's times where this program, this team makes the right read, makes the right play, especially when they're getting downhill, usually with some sort of penetration, with dribble penetration, with one of their guards, with one of the bigs kind of rushing the lane. Or sometimes, like, there was a moment in the middle of the second half after the 10-minute mark where you started noticing Renew was finding space at the top and driving basically able to penetrate the lane with the ball, getting good shot looks, layups, that little runner, that little jump hook that he has, getting to that diversity where he just could make a play. When this team is again playing in with enough space to maneuver, when they're playing with enough, there's basically attacking like double gaps in particular when they create double gaps for a guy like Rice or even Galloway, Carlisle, those guys. You see them there, and when they see the whole floor, when they're looking at that again, what we call the weak side, or the side away from the ball, when they're looking and they're able to make a pass out to an Mbako or a Goody, even doing that out of the post sometimes. So I think one of the problems, the limitations of the post is, when this team goes, when they don't have that dribble penetration, they don't have those gaps to attack, and they're forcing help dilemmas and they're forcing mismatches. All of a sudden, it becomes very robotic, and that's when you see, those sorts of, again, you go into the post situation, and some, we had several turnovers today, and they only turned it over 7 times. That's a plus. We'll get to that in stats, I guess. But, they only turned it over 7 times, but there were plenty, there were a couple of these where they were trying to force something out of the post to the perimeter. They just made the wrong read. It's a harder pass making it out of the post when you're back to the basket than if you have somebody going downhill. I feel like when Ballo and Renew are going downhill versus staying stagnant, and when they're in that more of a 4-out, 1-in, or even a 5-out alignment, they're much more effective than that 3-2. Where they have 2 guys on the blocks and the lane is just packed with defenders, offensive players. You got everybody in there trying, you really don't know where to go. It's a tug of war with this program sometimes, where it's like sometimes, they're I guess setting themselves up to attack front facing, using their effective penetrators with good shooters on the perimeter, with guys like Omar Ballo, who's amazing off of cuts, who can duck in, post seal. You have Malik Renew, who is phenomenal at when he's in that 2-man game and just attacking with the touch that he has. You have that. But when you're trying to force it, when you're, again, and I think Ryan hit this also, when you're one-dimensional, when you're looking for a singular play, when at 5 seconds you go ATO and you're attacking an ISO with Renew trying to attack and he dribbles off, and then that second play, when the switch doesn't happen, they have Renew attacking. It's just one of those deals where, okay, you're gonna have to, your identity at this point is attack, it is win the matchup. And so many times we talk about, you want to look at winning the matchup, look at that last sequence where I designed a play to go to Rice, and then we weren't able to get anything because they made an adjustment that we weren't anticipating. Versus if you look at a Dan Hurley, who's very structured offensively, I might add. Dan Hurley is so amazingly structured off ball, but he gives his ball handler so much freedom to basically make the right read. And they drill that through film, through practice, through preparation. That's what winning programs do. And showing them, okay, this is when you attack the closeout on a drive, this is when you attack the closeout on a shot, this is when you move the ball. There was one segment, meaningful moment that, that was great when Galloway got the ball on the slot, had Goody wide open in the corner, and he was quick to fire it around there, fire it down to that corner to get Goody a wide open corner 3.
Yeah.
I think that was, at like, somewhere in the first half. I mean, it was just amazing to watch that ball move when they're playing open, when they're playing free, when they're making the reads out of their sets versus trying to, or actions, I guess is a better way to put it. When they're doing stuff out of their actions where they've got the defensive movement and they've got the ball moving where the defense isn't, versus trying to cram the ball into limited space that the other team's prepared for it going where it's going. I mean, of course, Kevin Willard goes zone in the last possession because you're going to make him beat you on a long 3-point shot. And the other thing, and again, I'm not going to criticize. I don't, you can go either way on whether or not you should have Leal and Ballo win the game versus Goody and Mbako. I would say the one thing that gets you is that, you have 2 more guys who are better shot makers at the end. I can see why you would do that. I'd also see why you want to keep Ballo in case your first one misses and he can tip it in. I can see why you would keep Leal in there. I mean, but that's a good problem to have when you're debating at the end of a game who your end of the game is. But also, it's not, you want a good solution to it. You should know going in with 5 seconds who you're going to have. And you've prepped that to the point where no one's seen it. Because how many close games has IU really been in this year? Ohio State, maybe, where it's come down to that last possession. I think the first time all year we've actually had that last possession matter like this.
Yeah. You mentioned that the substitution there at the end. And I think you're right. I think you could argue it either way. The issue is it's not the final 5 that was out there. I think the bigger problem was the process to get there. Mm-hmm. I know producer Eddie put in the chat a quote from Myles Rice. They must have said in the post-game media, the substitutions kind of got everybody confused a little bit. Mm-hmm. That was the problem with it, is it felt like, we're trying to scramble and figure it out in the moment. There's not a calmness to the final play. Like if players are running off and on and you're kind of looking over at your coach and it doesn't quite seem like they know what they're doing, how are you going to feel as a player when that's going? So just the process of how Indiana got there, it didn't look like a program that really knew what it was doing in that moment. And you're not going to win a lot of close games when you don't. Another meaningful moment, Bob, and I think it's going to get lost in what happened when Maryland made the 3-pointer and the final possession for Indiana. It was 78-74. They had to get a bucket before that to even make the three, be able to put them ahead. And they went out of bounds. They had the ball out of bounds. They got it up to Julian Reese at the top of the key, isolated on Malik Renew. He drove 2 dribbles easy, one of the easiest buckets they got all game long. And that's the difference. Again, Kevin Willard, who Ryan Phillips reported on this show that there are a lot of people that don't think he's the greatest basketball coach in the world. That was reported here on the Assembly Call. And he was able to get that isolation for Reese, and as the announcer said, he knew Renew isn't gonna foul him because he has 4 fouls. Like, Malik, it's under a minute, man. Just play some defense. If you foul out, trying to play tough defense against a guy who isn't a good free throw shooter, that might be the better option. But just that contrast, I think, is meaningful. That Maryland really got what they wanted in tight situations more than Indiana got what they wanted. And Indiana's players were able to make some plays, to the credit of Indiana's players, guys like Leal and Rice and others who were able to find ways to impact the game. But when it came down to the execution, that's where I walk away from this just being really frustrated. And I thought the players brought the energy. I thought they brought the fight. I thought they brought toughness tonight. And that's where it frustrates me, where it's like, man, the other team just had a better plan and they seemed kind of better coached and better drilled on what they were going to do. That's really frustrating to me. And I think that's what was frustrating to so many fans, because the difference between this game and the Illinois game is I think the fans at the Illinois game could sense that, like, the guys on the court just weren't all there. And that's the only way that you give up 60 some points in the first half or whatever it was, It wasn't that tonight. Like, Indiana's not a very good defensive team, but it wasn't for effort, with lack of communication, lack of execution, all that stuff. And so the fans, I think, responded to that and were pretty positive. And as the announcer said many times, they're ready to explode. And when those moments came where you've got to execute to go get that bucket, it didn't happen. And, I think that Illinois game, I think you can put a lot on the players for not coming ready to play in addition to the coaches. I am much more frustrated with what happened on the sidelines than I am with what the players did today.
Tony Urania just put out on, I think it looks like on Twitter, that when the ball went out with 3.8 seconds left, no clue what they were doing. And then that ATO, I think, didn't they move those guys in that 3.8 seconds, if I recall? So that would be the other thing, was that you went out running with those, you had Ballo and Leal in for that original set that they were going to run, I believe, for Rice, is what Woodson is saying. And they just had Maryland on their heels, again, you just had that situation where you had a lot of advantages going your direction, and you just kind of looked like it. And again, I can just go back through that wall behind me and point to 25 mistakes I made end of game or at end of a quarter. And I can just go back, I forget where I put my car keys some days, but I can remember a play from 2006 with a bunch of 12-year-olds. I can remember screwing that up badly and how I still kick myself for these things. And I think that's really the question. I think that if you're a coaching staff in this situation is, how are you adjusting your practice and your approach to the game? When you look at this, like when you go into practice, assumedly tomorrow, to prepare for Purdue, okay, are you going to go over an EOG, end of game situations, more? Are you going to go over those end of half situations more? Basically adjusting how you do things and looking at that, because that's really kind of the question. I mean, again, everybody screws up. The problem is you're in a point where you don't really have much of a margin for error. And that margin for error today, from just a standpoint of how that all transpired, that Rice getting the ball in the corner for a fall away 3 at the end of the game, just that was not what they wanted, or even close to it. You have an action you can call right then and there. You're right by them. You should know exactly, what you're going to run from a coaching standpoint. I mean, you see guys with cards, they have their systems. I was just really kind of surprised. And, I think Tony hit the nail on the head. Just, it backs up what the players are saying, what Mike Woodson's saying, that we just got confused at the end. I mean, it's kind of like when the Coyote says, boy, that Roadrunner, I ran right off the cliff. The Roadrunner got, the Roadrunner ran right through the tunnel and I slammed into a wall. I'm not sure how that happened. Well, the viewer knows. I think everybody sitting in Assembly Hall knows. And that's, again, you get to that point. You may, and again, you did some good things. You did some not so good things. There was good, bad, and ugly across the board. But I mean, there's a lot of this that just comes back to, I think, philosophically, the other sideline knows where you want to put the ball. And you have a question of, do you have a player? I think Mike Woodson would have been surprised that Rodney Rice was the guy that took that 3-point shot at the end. I mean, was he 1, 2, or 3 option on that offense? Really? Probably not. But he was the guy that had the look. He's the guy that had the shot that was open. So you trust your guy to hit it. Just kind of like if you go back to 1987, was everybody just, oh my gosh, Keith Smart's going to be the guy that's going to win this for IU with a 15-footer? No, I mean, sometimes you take the shot that's available to you. I mean, you go and it's a back and forth conversation in the game, but is it who takes it or how do you get it? And I've always been more on the how you get it. And you have the personnel in the right places to make the shot when they need it, because that's just harder to coach against versus ball's going here. He's going to have to make a play and we're going to make it so he's going to have to make a really hard play.
Yeah. And I mean, credit to Maryland. I mean, on that play where Rice ended up with the 3, what they wanted to do initially didn't work. No, I think it was Gillespie maybe that drove into the lane. And I do want to watch it again because live, I thought he either traveled or double dribbled. I thought there was some malfeasance in the lane. It wasn't called either way. But again, that's where Indiana has to foul. But Maryland was able to then again find Rice, and he made a great shot. I mean, honestly, that's a low percentage 3. Even for a good shooter like him, he's probably only making that 25% of the time. And if he misses that and Indiana wins, the tone of the show is definitely different because we never have that play at the end. And so I fully recognize all of that. But he did make it. And this is a home game, and you got to win your home games, and especially a game like this that's right there, you got to close that out. And Indiana wasn't able to. So let's go to numbers, Coach. Brought to you by Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. If you live in Bloomington or the surrounding areas and you want your taxes done right, contact our friend and Chop Mob Hall of Famer Megan Mahaffey and her team in Bloomington, Bedford, and Martinsville by calling 812-339-3334 or by visiting jacksonhewitt.com. So there's a couple numbers I want to point out, and we talk about the offense. And again, Indiana loses. They don't execute on offense. A lot of people don't want to hear about how this was a quote unquote good offensive performance. And yet at the end of the day, Indiana scored 1.24 points per possession against a team in Maryland that is 25th in the country in adjusted defensive efficiency. So there were a lot of moments to nitpick, but over the course of 40 minutes, Indiana played pretty efficient offense. We mentioned the 3-point shooting numbers, but what really helped today, Bob, is Indiana gets 14 offensive rebounds and only turns the ball over 7 times. And so this is an Indiana program that hasn't always been on the positive side of shot volume, right? Like just give yourself more possessions, get rebounds, don't turn it over, get more shots at it. And Indiana won that battle today over Maryland slightly. They had 1 more offensive rebound. They had 3 fewer turnovers. They got to the free throw line a little bit more. That's how, when you lose the 3-point shooting battle by 15 points, you're able to still fight, scratch, and claw to basically the same offensive efficiency as Maryland and only lose by 1. And so I think we've got to credit the team for that because those aren't always things that have been there. But being able to rebound, now, some of the turnovers they did make, were live ball turnovers that led directly to points. I mean, Maryland only had 7 points off turnovers, but a couple of those were pretty unforced that you don't want to see. But still, overall, that's a big part of the reason why Indiana was able to stay in this game. And so as much as we do want to nitpick the offense, and I think sometimes it's easier to talk about the offense, what really failed Indiana today for 40 minutes was the defense. The offense failed Indiana in some key stretches. The defense failed Indiana over the course of the whole game. So those numbers stood out to me. What else stood out to you?
Your bench was plus 14. And that I think when he had a Malik Renew who struggled early and struggled throughout the game, there was again that one stretch where he was getting downhill that I referenced earlier, where he was actually making some pretty good shots and actually getting into the flow of it scoring wise. But bringing in Goody, Galloway, And even Carlisle had a couple, had at least put some points up, put a field goal up in 8 minutes. You by being plus 12 on the bench, you showed that you can play multiple different ways, and I think IU showed that. I mean, I would agree on that offensively it wasn't terrible. There were a lot of good things. There were some things that fell apart. Defensively, they had some moments where they played tough, but there were also just same systemic problems we've actually seen throughout the season. But I go back to this, that 7 turnovers was key. I mean. And back to the free throws, they were like 9 of 15. Maryland was 7 of 9. IU didn't foul as much, but they where the fouls were coming from, where you basically was giving their 4 spot. You could definitely tell Kevin Willard was attacking Luke Goody. He was attacking Malik Renew, attacking Mackenzie Mbako, because he had 3 drivers and IU didn't for most of the game. And that's one of the, again, a competitive disadvantage that IU can be in at times, is that they don't always have the personnel to cover modern or teams in 2025. And they don't have a philosophy behind it to actually stop the ball from penetrating and stop the ball from moving and stop the ball from bouncing through. I mean, you gave up they shot 50% from 3. It wasn't, I mean, they took 24 3-point shots, hit 12 of them. And I think you said this, when they switched to zone, they had 2 wide open shots that, for the one that Rodney Rice hit at the end, they had 2 at least that, basically were rim outs versus what they were kind of working with. So, I mean, ultimately it's a shot making, this for most of the game was a shot making game, to be perfectly honest. This was a game of who puts the orange thing through the orange thing more times versus a structural difference. I know the frustrating thing at the end of the game was that, but I mean, you could tell that you had 2 teams who were both shooting the ball relatively well, pretty well throughout the whole game. And it came down to the last possession, and one team just out executed the other. But, I do look at that, I think the other thing I kind of look at from there was it's just a lot of even across the board, just a lot of even across the board. And there's no one area statistically, other than maybe the 3-point shooting, where one team outperformed the other. And even then, IU still shot 41% from 3. I mean, they had one of their better percentage shooting performances. We can argue about the volume.
Yeah, a lot of times it's not the efficiency that gets you; it's the volume on the 3-point shooting, which we've said so often. I don't even want to get into that. But
no, I mean but even then, it's like you had that, and the other thing was I also felt like there were times where it's especially in the first half, they really didn't take a whole lot of those mid-range jumpers. I think actually Maryland was shooting more of the mid-range versus Indiana, so there's that as a potential thing to be okay, there's something there, but.
Yes, I thought over the course of 40 minutes, you saw some good things offensively. But I'll tell you, when I forgot to mention this in meaningful moments, again, sometimes it's the timing of a play that makes such a big difference. And so, Indiana, as I mentioned before, didn't come out very well to start the second half. Maryland scores 4 straight points. Mike Woodson takes a timeout. Mm-hmm. Indiana, had gone many, many possessions without a field goal. Myles Rice ended up breaking the drought. And then on that play where Galloway missed a 3, and Mbako flies in for the rebound, and it was 42-37. All of a sudden, it's 42-41. And you felt the crowd ready to explode.
Yeah.
It's this hustle play by Mbako. Okay, here we go. Just go get a stop. And what happens? Indiana has a miscommunication on the perimeter. Maryland steps into a wide open 3, drains it, 45-41. Now, again, that's a play early in the second half. A whole lot happened after it where you can make up for it. But that's one of those missed opportunities, especially when you're at home, when you have a chance to build on a run. We all know how Assembly Hall is. Like, when it's bubbling, it's ready to explode. You got to go make that play. And there were several times today where it was bubbling, and then Maryland made the play. Again, at the end of the game, Leal was able to make one of those. But there's moments in the second half, there's moments in the first half where you've got to capitalize on that, because what was a 4-0 run, maybe it becomes a 7 or a 9-point run. And all of us who read evanmia.com, we understand the importance of kill shots, 10-point runs. You got to give yourself a chance to get some of those. And so to have just a defensive miscommunication lead to a wide open 3, those are those frustrating moments in the game. You think back in a 1-point loss, you're just like, man, you can't have that stuff in those moments. And that happens too often to Indiana.
If you do the easy things well, if you do the routine things well, the spectacular things are more effective. You're then able to use those spectacular things as those types of kill shots, as those sorts of moments where you flip the game, versus where that type of spectacular play puts you in a position where you're now having to stop the bleeding. Like, we had to do something spectacular to get us back into it, versus this, because again, you gave up a couple, 3 routine things that you should have worked out that should just be there. And so I mean, I would say one last thing before we get off of the stats. I do want to just mention Derek Queen for a moment, because many of us remember him.
Boy, he's a good player.
He's something.
He is
And
a good basketball player, man.
We know why Indiana really wanted him, but in a game where there were of the 5 starters, 4 of them were in double figures, and one of them was not named Derek Queen, but he still ended up with double-digit rebounds. He still ended up with 3 assists on 1 turnover. But ultimately, you see him when he would switch off to a guard, or he'd switch off to another player. He was able to kind of keep them in space, prevent them from doing certain things. I mean, he made his fair share of mistakes. Had some plays but there was one moment at the 16-15 mark, one of the baskets he had. He actually, to start the game before the first time out, drove a post double, got the baseline, I think hit a reverse layup, and you're like, I see why we wanted this kid. I mean, it's one of those things that, and again, I thought he played Malik Renew very well. Again, those guys are going back probably, I think he was a sophomore when he was a senior, sort of thing. That you can just see that practice at Mount Verard where he was working him. So you can just kind of see that these guys are, but that's just, special. Again, that was one of those things where it's like, man, you can really see why this coaching staff was all in on him.
He's terrific. If you go look at his KenPom numbers for a freshman, they're outrageous. I mean, his efficiency, and I remember when Indiana was recruiting him, it's like, why are we going to take another big? It's like, man, you just what? And you know what I love about his game? He does it with the old school stuff: footwork, hands, touch, vision. He's able to play more athletic because he just knows where he's going a half second quicker than you know what he's going to do. And I think he's going to be terrific. And I think he's going to have a long NBA career. I know he's more of you don't see that a lot for, below the rim 6'10" guys, but when you watch him play, he just does so many basketball things well. And I think he's made a big impact for them. In terms of just, because he both has, I think, star potential, and he's a connective piece. And it's rare to get that same thing in one guy. So yes, I fully understand why Indiana went after him, and I wanted him really bad. And that is why. He is terrific, really a terrific player. And this wasn't even one of his better statistical games. No, but I think you still saw several moments in the game where you're like, man, that was a winning play. Man, that was a winning play. And they won. So, all right. Coming up on the assembly call, we are going to hand out our game balls, our Hoosier Hustle Award. We'll discuss a lingering question or two. Look ahead to what's coming next Friday, Coach. A little bit about that. That is all next year on the assembly call. Stick with us.
This is Tim Priller, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
All right. Thank you, Tim. We appreciate it. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jared Morris here with the coach Bob Moats from X's and Joe's. And we are breaking down Indiana's 79-78 loss to Maryland today. And it is time now for our game balls, presented by our friends Allie and James at Bloom Environmental. They want to help you protect your home's air quality. And the best way to do that is to stop water at the source. Voted best of B-Town in basement services for 4 years running, their basement waterproofing and crawl space encapsulation is the best defense your home can have against mold growth and structural damage. Mention Assembly Call and get 10% off your system. Call today for a free estimate, or if you just want to hear Allie talk about Kurt Signetti for an hour, I think everybody would be happy to just talk about Kurt Signetti for an hour at this point. But you can learn more at bloomenviro.com. By the way, if you do want to hear someone talk about bloomenviro.com, is that URL, bloomenviro.com. If you want to hear someone talk about Kurt Signetti for an hour or 2.5 hours, recent Crimson Cast, first Galen had Taylor Lehman on. And then Galen had Scott on. And so they broke down Indiana's recruiting, the roster, what to expect from the stadium, the tickets, all kinds of stuff. So really 2 terrific episodes of Crimson Cast. Highly recommend that you check them out. And of course, check out X's and Joe's. Bob, you guys recently did episode 23 and a half, which was difficult to schedule because the person you were trying to have on as a guest was not very cooperative in finding times to come on. That person will remain nameless, although he's speaking right now.
Don't know anything about him. Who is he? Who is that guy?
No, I do hope to get on with you guys soon. You continue to do really terrific work. And I think bring a lot of calm rationality, certainly to a season that is ripe with strong emotion. And not that you guys aren't emotional, but I think you really ground your discussions. You ground your discussions in facts and reason and history. I think that's what makes it such a pleasant listen.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and just really enjoy. Hell, I get a chance to talk to one of my best friends for a couple hours every couple weeks. So that's the fact that someone else listens to it's just bonus. It's like but I would just I would just say that at this point, we are the analytical side of this. It's so I find it could be easy to get really to the point where you're just throwing things through the wall. Just trust. I think I tell everybody this. Just trust your gut judgment. Trust your gut. Someone actually made a comment like, "Well, why would you root against your team? That's horrible." No, none of us I think are rooting against our team here. What we're doing is we're bifurcating. We want this team to do as well as possible. I mean, there are some individuals, and they are more than entitled, and I can understand exactly where they're coming from and some of their views as to looking at the long term. However you want to fan is up to you. But I think a lot of it's that whole rationality conversation where it's like, if you're looking for that, if you're looking for those explanations, they're out there, and you just got to kind of trust your gut, trust your instincts, and know kind of what you're looking for. That was subtle, wasn't it?
No, yes.
I was like,
All right. Let's talk about game ball. I think game ball is interesting because I think there's a few different places that you can go for this. Fortunately, we do have the Hustle Award. So Anthony Leal will be getting hardware today. The question is he getting the game ball or is he getting the Hustle Award? So I will go to you first.
Let me make it easy. I'm going to make it easy on which one he gets. I'm going to say Myles Rice on the game ball, because when you talk about a guy that was just making plays when IU needed them throughout the entirety of the game. I mean, Myles Rice plays 35 minutes, was 5 for 11 from the field, 3 or 5 from 3, 3 or 4 from the line, had 1 turnover, 3 assists, and played. When IU needed a big shot, he was there in the right place, right time. When IU needed that, when they had to break the run, going in the second half, that entry point, coming ATO, he hits the double gap, hits a 12 footer that was just right there available when IU was playing over post, and they switched off to using more of that downhill dribble penetration we talked about earlier. He's the sort of player that can make that happen. I think the more he gets the keys to the car in the next 10 games, the better. I think the more they free his game up and let him just make reads, give him space to make reads and drive defenses crazy and hit the right guy, this team, they can be more towards their ceiling versus their floor. So I go with Myles Rice.
Hey, by the way, we got a super chat. We got a tip, Bob, from Benedict Jones. Thanks for all you do. Look at that.
Thank you, Benedict. Thank you.
All right. We very much appreciate that. Thank you very much. And really, by the way, kudos to the chat. I haven't been looking at all, but every time I've popped in, it seemed to be a mostly productive conversation in there, which is nice. It can be tough after games like today. So maybe I just missed a bunch of nonsense at the beginning. But I appreciate the tone that y'all are taking in there. I am going to second that, Bob. That's who I was going to give mine to, is Myles Rice. I think you could make an argument for Umar Ballo if you wanted to, simply because he's always the most important player for Indiana. He played 39 minutes. You know what's funny?
Another double-double.
Umar Ballo, 39 minutes plus 1 in the game. So the 1 minute.
He wasn't on.
Last play. I mean, gosh. But Ballo finishes with 14 points, 10 boards, 3 assists, 1 block, 2 steals. He has really, I think, overall, again, I know, and I mentioned him, but maybe it was on the Illinois game. He had that play that kind of went viral where he was just giving no effort whatsoever. But man, if you really look at it on balance, kind of ever since he missed a game or two or whatever he missed, he's really played well for Indiana. He's played a lot of minutes. He's been asked to do a lot and carry a really heavy burden. And it's really easy to take that kind of production for granted, but when you have the burden for production like he does and the burden for minutes like he does, you still have to go out there and do it. And he continues to do it. So I could make an argument for him, but I'm going with Rice because I think without his shots and the timing of his shots, again, in a game, sometimes there's moments where someone's got to step up, and not all 3-point attempts, they all kind of even out at the end of the game. But when you're watching a game, some just feel more important in the moment than others to give your team a lift, to get some momentum, to stop some momentum. And I thought all of his shots were really big. And because of that, then Indiana was able to battle back, and Anthony Leal had the ability to make his plays. But without Myles Rice's shot making, Leal doesn't have that. So I'm with you. And I would like to see, even more, run through Myles Rice. He's a huge part of what Indiana's doing. And I think he's a guy that as he goes into the second part of Big Ten play, if he gets more comfortable, gets more confident, and if the structure of Indiana's offense is a little bit more conducive to him doing what he does well, so a little bit more spacing and his ability to drive, that can be really important for Indiana. Now let's go on to the Hoosier Hustle Award, sponsored by our friends at Evansville Security Services.
Hi, this is Anthony Leal, reminding you to check out our friends at Evansville Security Services. Based in the hometown of IU legend Calvert Chaney, Evansville Security Services has been providing off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals since 2001. In other words, they're in the business of prevention and peace of mind. And remember, prevention cannot be measured. To learn more about how Evansville Security Services can help you preserve your peace of mind by preventing bad outcomes, visit evansvillesecurityservices.com. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. Well, I think where I'm going with this, Bob. He got the banner moment. I think, sometimes Anthony Leal's plays are kind of quiet and subtle. Today, they were loud, and everybody noticed them because they were big. They were in big moments, and you can say, okay, 6 points, 5 rebounds, a couple assists in 19 minutes. Like, what's the big deal? But you watch the game, you watch this program consistently, and you know what the big deal is. Because, having high-end talent hasn't really been Indiana's issue. We've got guys that are playing in the NBA. Khalil Ware is now the betting favorite to be the rookie of the year. We've got 5 stars. We've got all this stuff. Like, there have been guys that clearly have talent and can do things. I think where this program has struggled more is having the connecting players and the guys who do the little things. And look, there was a play in the first half, which I thought was kind of funny, where, Leal and Goody, who are constantly held up, they're the guys who communicate and they make the right plays, and they messed up communication and transition, and Maryland got that wide open layup. So, these guys make mistakes too. But for this team, in big moments when you've needed plays, the rebound, steal, a hustle play, some toughness, it's been Goody and Leal, and they were the guys who stepped up and talked after the Illinois game, and I think for the most part have backed that up. And Anthony Leal did, he did his part today to win, and his part is never going to be a leading part. He needs to play with other good players and have them, kind of lift him up and maximize his contributions. But you certainly got a lot of hustle from him today, and it's a shame that those plays didn't result in a victory.
Leal was a no-brainer. I was hearing hearing the ad and going, yeah, that's you today. Because if you think about what a hustle award was, and the last note I wrote was Leal, right place, right time. And then right after that, I think Papa said the same. It was like I had the same. It's like that was a play where IU was trying again. He expanded just by being in the right place at the right time, and knowing just hustling, was able to deal with, and the set was went right to Renew, and they got the deflection, and he was right there to pick it up for the layup in the end one. or making the big defensive stop. I mean, I think that was probably, that was one of the big plays of the game for IU is when he makes a big defensive stop, late shot clock for Maryland, and he catalysts a 3-on-1
when the guy called
break.
for the ISO.
Right.
Called for the ISO on him.
I'm gonna take it on this kid. And he just said, fine, I'm gonna get gritty and I'm just gonna stop it, stops it, shuts it off, gets it 3-on-1 and gets it back because he ran the floor, got the layup, and the N1 hits the free throw. I think at that point it tied the game or gave him a lead. I can't remember which one it was, but that was a hell of a play. And the kid's a difference maker. He can be he is a difference maker on the court. You're right. He's not going to win Big Ten Player of the Year. He's not going to be, he may not, again, his NBA is probably not going to be there. It's just, but he's the sort of kid that
more bold claims on the assembly call today.
I'm telling you, and water is wet and the sun comes up in the morning. But no, I mean, you go through a lot of this and it's like, you just kind of wonder, he does a lot of good just by being on the floor. And it's one of those deals where I don't want to say this and be cruel or maybe misinterpret what I have to say, but if you got that from everybody else, if you got the same sort of savvy, the same sort of leadership, the same sort of act versus speak, the same sort of I can recover from mistakes, all of those things, Mark, she just said leadership, basketball IQ across the board, you would, a lot of the problems we're talking about they go away. And a lot of it just comes down to just the leadership question. And again, come to your own conclusions. But I would say that at the end of the day, you have Anthony Leal that right place, right time, does the right thing. Once again.
Well, this is kind of the issue, Bob. I mean, this is why, Indiana basketball has not felt equal to the sum of its parts, even. Forget greater than the sum of its parts, even equal to the sum of its parts. Because we've got some guys with talent, but they don't have some of the other stuff. And we've got some guys with the other stuff, and they don't have some of the talent. And the really good teams have more guys that do both, and that's so, I mean, Indiana has to have guys like Leal and Goody on the floor, and are those guys playing this many minutes on a great team? Probably not. They probably get a little bit overexposed. Mm-hmm. There was a play Leal had early in the game where he made a beautiful basket cut, and a college basketball player should be able to convert the layup, and he wasn't able to. No. And he just hasn't been in that position very much. He doesn't quite have the athleticism, and he's not able to do it. So there's some things that he's not able to do, and there's some things he doesn't put on the table. But he does all this little stuff that no one else does, and so it really stands out. Or not no one, but most of the other guys don't do, and so it really stands out. And to win games, you got to have people doing that. And so that's just something from recruiting and development and accountability standpoint that Indiana has to continue to develop.
And if everybody makes a 45 cut like he does, that puts pressure on defenses, and then that's going to make people like Malik Renew and Mackenzie Mbako's ability to score the basketball in those situations all the more easier.
Yeah,
you give of yourself to help, and sometimes if it's Renew making the cut, it attracts even more attention. It's just how much are guys giving up to get what this team needs. And I can tell you, I think Leal leaves it out on the floor every single time, every game.
Yep, absolutely. So another Hustle Award for Anthony Leal. That is his 4th of the season, and Myles Rice's 8th game ball. He is far and away dominating in the game balls. Lingering question, Coach. Well, as we look here, Indiana currently 62nd in KenPom. Hey, that's where we entered the day. Okay.
Yeah.
So we stayed the same in KenPom. We are currently 69th in adjusted defensive efficiency. Not nice. Conference only unadjusted defensive efficiency. We are 12th in the conference. And so my lingering question for you, Coach, is does Braden Smith watch Indiana film with a notebook and pen or with popcorn? Because we better have some defense. We better have some better defense for him, or he and Trey Kaufman-Wren and Fletcher Lawyer are going to pick us apart. And look, again, the offense is playing better. I don't think Purdue is great defensively. So I think there's going to be some points to be had, but I don't think we want to get into a game where we're just trading baskets with them. And so we got to figure something out defensively against obviously a terrific Big Ten point guard who we seem like the kind of defense that he would just lick his chops to go up against, because he can kind of create those mismatches, get you moving one way, go the other. And you just can't have a lot of miscommunications against them, or they're going to be getting open shots all game long. So that to me is the biggest lingering question. Do we bring a defensive effort and level of execution that gives us a chance to win that game? Because that's what you're asking for. You're playing in Mackey. Odds are you're going to lose. We don't have Jalen Hood-Schifino here to maybe Myles Rice can pull a Jalen Hood-Schifino. But if we're gonna compete and have a chance, the defense has to be light years better than it was today. I can't say I have a lot of faith in that, but it is a lingering question that I will pose.
I'll quickly hit that one, because I think you can't go underneath screens on them. You're going to have to pressure passing lanes. You're going to have to not. They'll kill you in drop coverage if you put them in drop coverage, and especially the way IU plays drop coverage. There's a lot that, they're going to have to, with Purdue, you almost want them to, you're actually going to want to let them penetrate it and then funnel them away from the middle towards the side, towards the sidelines. And the question is, will IU make those adjustments playing Purdue? One thing I can give Mike Woodson credit for here, when they had Zach Edey those first 2 seasons, Woody was here, they had a hell of a game plan, and they did a great number on those first 4 games of just shutting them off. Last year, there were some times where even though we got blown out of the gym twice against them, there were some moments where IU did some amazing, actually came back in both games to close it within a couple possessions after they were down by 20. So, I mean, for whatever again, it's a rivalry game, and Mike Woodson knows that his college career ended when they played Purdue, so he wants to take it to them every single time. But I think you're right when you said popcorn and a pencil and paper. He's got the pencil and paper, he's got the popcorn, he's got a hot cup of coffee, and he's breaking this down. It's another game. We got a bunch of guys, some of whom really wanted to go to Indiana University at one point in their careers, and we saw how Brooks Barnheiser felt playing IU, when he wanted that IU offer and got a chance to play him one last time. So, I guess at the end of the day, if they go under screens and they give them space to shoot and they help off Fletcher Lawyer, it may be a long night, but they figure some other things out. Could be a game. Again, they're going to need some quad 1 wins. And I think that's really the question, is that, can they play up to the level? Can they become equal to the sum of their parts, if not better than the sum of their parts in the next 4 games? As time goes on and you play this type of talent, you should see, and this is going to be I'm just going to flow into my lingering question here. Can they get in these next 4 games improvement to where they can actually, when we're all sitting together in Bloomington here in a couple weeks, will we see a game where IU will be able to maybe again win against Michigan? Michigan's had a couple really rough games recently, so it's like they're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But will this team be hitting stride in 2 weeks? And these next 3 games going into that are going to be very telling as to whether or not what we're going to see going into the month of February. What type of conversation we're going to be having about this team's season now? Forget down the road. Now, these next 3 games, if they end up 0-4 out of these, it's going to be a very difficult haul, to say the least.
Yeah, and you look at, these are just the Ken Palm ranks of Indiana's games coming up: at number 8 Purdue, at number 14 Wisconsin in a gym where we've never won, home against Michigan, who is number 18, at Michigan State, number 16. They have not lost a Big Ten game yet. And then home against UCLA, who's 33rd, and then home for Purdue, number 8. This always projected to be a very, very difficult part of the schedule, which is why we talked about how the games preceding it, ending with this one against Maryland, were really important for Indiana to rack up some wins. Give yourself a little bit of a buffer zone. Put some wins in your back pocket, then see if you can weather the storm. Indiana has lost 4 out of 5. They did get the 1 win at Ohio State, which is a quad 1 win. You battled back in overtime, did it without Malik Renew, and so a lot of credit there. But Indiana has lost 4 out of 5, 2 of those at home. So now you haven't done what you needed to do against teams that, you should have been able to beat a couple more of them than you did. So now you're going to have to go beat some teams that people don't think you're going to beat. And it just depends on your perspective. I mean, if you're out on this team, you look at this run as, oh my God, are any of these games going to be in single digits? Or if you're maintaining hope, if you're maintaining some optimism, you look at this as an opportunity. It's like, hey, put those games in the rear view. Every year under Mike Woodson, we've had a little lull like this in Big Ten play, and then it feels like we come out of it and we start winning games people don't think we can. Maybe this is when we're going to do it. You know,
Who knows?
I really want to be in the second group.
Mhm.
I'm not going to lie to you. That's not viscerally how I feel. But we're going to see. You take it one game at a time. If they can go do something unexpected in Mackey, that's the kind of game that could turn your season around and give you some confidence. So really no reason to look beyond that. Let's go see what they do against Purdue. We always want to kick Purdue's butt, you know? And so no matter what has to happen to make that happen, let's see what we can do. And maybe it helps turn the season around. But I understand those who enter that game not feeling real confident, you know, and kind of want to see it. Because I think when you lose 4 out of 5 to 5 teams that are not as good at Purdue, thinking that you're going to go into Mackey and turn things around, that's not usually how it works. All right. Thank you for listening to the Assembly Call. Remember to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code HOME23 at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Bob, time for last call. Your final thoughts on this Indiana loss.
Trent Green looks really good for a guy 4 years older than me. Trent Green looks amazing. Looks like he could still
same as the day he was recruited.
You know, all I remember was him in shoulder pads and seeing him a couple times without a helmet on, because he really didn't have a helmet on when he was at IU. I'll tell you that much. I remember that much about him. But man, he looked good. And watching Kurt Signetti point at him and say, "This is the greatest quarterback in Indiana University football history." You know that. I mean, it was one of those. It's something that, you know, it was great. It was just great seeing him there, watching his nephew play. I don't know. I'm a little sentimental, I guess, because, you know, my kid sees Martha the Mop Lady goes on and he yells IU and he starts clapping and he's so excited. Like he saw Santa Claus and Elvis all wrapped up into one. I mean, it's our pregame tradition here. And then he goes, takes a snap or something. But, you know, I just love the fact that, you know, IU can drive that sort of emotion, you know, multiple generations of fandom, multiple generations of institutional buy-in, multiple generations of, you know, where you're going to be with this. And I think, yeah, it was just nice seeing him back, watching Luke play today. And, you know, Luke was able to hit a couple big shots, do some really good things on the boards, you know, had some foul trouble, but, you know, it's just good. It's just good seeing these guys back every once in a while. And then also seeing the response given to the football program, I think in one of the timeouts where it's like, you know, the appreciation that we have for this, for it's a good sign for the future for not just the football program, not just for the athletics program, but for the institution in general, that we just have a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. For my last comment, I just want to give some kudos to the fans who were there at Assembly Hall today. Now, look, we hopped right on the show immediately following the game. If something happened after the game, I don't know, but let's talk about I'm not saying anything did, but if there was booing or whatever after the game, I didn't hear that. So for the 39 minutes and 30 seconds leading up to that final stretch, I really thought the fans, just from watching on TV. And so if you were there, and if I have this wrong, let me know, because I'm speaking about something I wasn't there in person for. But for those who just kind of felt like Indiana fans now were going to show up against their team, no. If you don't play one of the worst halves in school history in the first half and immediately set things on the wrong foot like Indiana did in the Illinois game, Indiana's fans are showing up, the people who were there wanting to cheer this team on, wanting to get behind them and help be part of the solution for victory. And it didn't happen today. And again, I didn't think Indiana's players were quite ready to capitalize on some of those moments when, you know, you can blow the roof off and then maybe you get Maryland off balance for a minute or two. That didn't happen, but it did feel like the crowd was ready. And that was one of the big things I think a lot of people were worried about is, oh my God, if this doesn't go well and we're on CBS national TV, if this is like the Illinois game, but it wasn't. And it wasn't because the players brought a lot more fight and effort. You know, the team was better prepared. And, you know, I thought the fans, for a program where there's a lot of frustration, and I think legitimately there's kind of a lack of hope and belief, they brought it today to try to help the team. And that's what fans should do when you show up to the game. So I hope next time when we're at home and we're going to be in the house, you know, for that Michigan game, hopefully it's a little bit more of the same, because I think it's fine to be frustrated and, you know, say stuff on social media, say stuff here on a post-game show. But I buy in. I'm not, you know, I don't want to fan how you're going to fan. I'm not telling you you're wrong. My personal belief is if you're going to go to the game for those 2 hours, you rally with the team, you're part of the team, you do whatever you can to win, and you see where the dust settles at the end of 2 hours. Everybody giving it their all. And then you go out and, yell in the car and get mad, do whatever if you lose. And it felt like that today. And so that was nice to see. But look, it's disappointing. Indiana's sitting here 62nd in Ken Palm, 14-7, but a record that's pretty flimsy. I mean, the 2 quad 1 road wins are legitimate, but there's not a whole lot else. And Indiana's running out of time to build a tournament resume. So they've got opportunities. They got to take advantage of them. Today was a big missed opportunity. It's going to burn. It should burn, but hopefully Indiana can learn from it because there were some good lessons to learn about how you win a game late. Credit to Maryland for doing it. And hopefully, again, Indiana can learn from it and be better next time. All right, that'll do it. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. Don't forget to go to substack.assemblycall.com to join our free email newsletter. Special thank you to Bob Thompson for the music you hear on the show. Special thank you to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logo. Thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you on Friday after the Purdue game. Until then.
Take it from me, Max Bielfeldt. Keep your calves flexed, your elbows in, and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Will, we've gotten enough show. All right, I got to go pick my kids up.
Okay,
Bob, thanks for being here, man.
My pleasure, and always fun to do the show. Always fun to talk to you, Jared, and we'll just see you soon.
Fun to be here. Thanks everybody who was here. Awesome to see so many folks here on a Sunday. All right, let's go watch some good NFL football games.
Go football.
Yep. Yeah. See you, everybody.